Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hmm. So today we'll be starting in the early Gothic style. Okay, write down the time
Ma'am, your
period.
voice is not audible.
Is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we'll start with Gothic architecture. Write down the time period 12th to 16th century. First point is Gothic architecture was evolved gradually in 12th century. It was evolved gradually in 12th century from Romanesque architecture. It is mainly characterized by the introduction of pointed arch buttresses and high pinnacle. It is mainly characterized. Yes, Shruti?
Ma'am, and high.
Pinnacles.
Okay.
Next point. If Gothic architects were not in position, if Gothic architects were not in position to calculate precisely the weight and thrust of a building, they would never
They would never.
know the value of certain structural devices. They know thoroughly that the stability of a structure, they knew thoroughly that the stability of a structure depends upon the proper adjustment of thrust, depends upon the proper adjustment of thrust and counter thrust. Next point, in Roman style, the walls were solidly massive. In Roman style, the walls were solidly massive and supported the continuous walls. But but Gothics invented the flying buttresses.
Ma'am, a little slow.
Achha, okay. In Roman style, the walls were solidly massive and supported the continuous walls. But Gothics invented the flying buttresses, the flying buttresses, which they placed, which they placed it at right angles to the length of the wall to
Length
take the
of
collect
the.
length of the wall to take collected pressure of the ribbed walls to transmit it to the ground finally. To transmit it to the ground finally. It represents a major step. It represents a major step in skeletonization of piers, buttresses, arches, and ribbed vaulting. All held in equilibrium, all held in equilibrium by combination of inclined and vertical forces, by combination of inclined and vertical forces neutralizing each other. Neutralizing each other. Next point. The walls were no longer the walls were no longer treated as a solid support, but hollowed out now hollowed out and reduced to thin layer and reduced to thin layer only to enclose the structure. A second step in voiding a second step in voiding the walls was the multiplication of window openings. Was the multiplication of window openings. All these helped the Gothic style to achieve all these helped the Gothic style to achieve a lot of economy in their construction. Next point, the technical advantages. The technical advantages of this system are threefold. First of all, first of all, the tunnel wall presses on the whole. The tunnel wall presses on the whole of the two
Of the two,
walls on which it rests. Of the two walls on which it rests. The Romanesque groin walls which press down. The Romanesque groin walls which press down on only 4 points, require square base require square base for satisfactory construction. Next point, if a round arched groin vault, if a if a round arched groin vault is to be constructed, is to be constructed over an oblong bay, over an oblong
oblong what?
bay, bay, arches of three different dias, arches of three different dias are required to be used over the long and the short side of the rectangle, over the long and the short side of the rectangle, and across the diagonal, and across the diagonal. Next point, if a transverse arch is made semicircular, then the diagonal becomes then the diagonal becomes depressed, but such depressed arches are unsafe and dangerous from structural point of view. From structural point of view. Next point. The pointed arch, the pointed arch is therefore more nearer to get safety, more nearer to get safety, and also easy to construct over base, and also easy to construct over base, other than square. Next point, the Gothic wall, the Gothic wall is constructed with ribs. The Gothic wall is constructed with ribs to increase the strength of groin. To increase the strength of groins.
Ma'am, constructed with
Ribs, RIB ribs, to increase the strength of groins. Next point. The Gothic also invented the stained colored glasses. The Gothic also invented the stained colored glasses, which has three basic properties. First, it could be used to contain brilliant transparent pictures. First, it could be used to contain brilliant transparent pictures. Second, it was a rich material. It was a rich material resembling precious stone, resembling precious stone. Thirdly, it was like a mystery. It was like a mystery as it glows without the fire. As it
as it what?
glowed, glowed without the fire.
Ma'am, it was like as if
What? It was a mystery. It was like a mystery as it glowed without the fire. Next point. Gothic architects. Gothic architects designed town halls, royal places, royal palaces, courthouses, and hospitals. They fortified they fortified cities and built castles to defend their land against invasions. To defend their lands against invasions. They also constructed bridges. They also constructed bridges to facilitate transportation. Next point, the construction of churches. The construction of churches that Gothic style attained is most meaningful expression. The churches were arranged the churches were arranged for convenience rather than symmetry. The churches were arranged for convenience rather than symmetry. The interiors were oblong, covered with rib and panel vaulting. The interiors were oblong, covered with rib and panel vaulting, or with open timber roof, or with open timber roofs. Naves were divided into many naves were divided into many bays, thus producing grandeur. Thus producing grandeur. The weight of the nave vault is carried down. The weight of the nave vault is carried down by flying buttresses to the roof of the aisles and then by the buttresses to ground level and then by the buttresses to ground level. Towers often crowned with spires. Towers often crowned with spires were predominant. Were predominant. The introduction of tracery, the introduction of tracery, an invention of Gothic style, an invention of Gothic style is a special feature. Is a special feature. Next point. Doorways were proportional to the human scale. Doorways were proportional to human scale. Large size windows divided by vertical mullions. Large size windows divided by vertical mullions and horizontal transoms and horizontal transoms were used to display of painted glass. Were used to display of painted glass. Next point. Columns were used to support galleries and semicircular arches. Columns were used to support galleries and semicircular arches. Classic proportions were not used. Classic proportions were not used, and molding at base and capital were done as per the fancy of the craftsman and were done as the fancy of the craftsman and their plan was fixed by and their plan was fixed by molded arches and vaulted ribs. Molded arches and vaulted ribs. The moldings were enriched with delicate carvings. Molding was enriched with delicate carving. Next point, projecting vertical buttresses, projecting vertical buttresses, casting deep shadows, breathtaking lofty molded pinnacles, breathtaking lofty molded pinnacles, together with steep roofs, together with steep roofs, towers and spires, towers and spires exhibited vertically. Carving, this is the next point, carving possessed decorative characters and enriched doors, rose windows, buttresses and pinnacles, buttresses and pinnacles. Statues which were proportional to the human scale, statues which were proportional to the human scale were an integral part of the building. Were an integral part of the building. Next point, on medieval ornamentation was based on mysticism, medieval mysticism and Christian subjects in the stained glass of the windows. In the stained glass of the windows and over the plinth, the jamb, the wazers, the creation of man, Jonah with veil, the coming of Christ, the Last Supper, and so on. One, okay. So next is few examples. The first one is Notre Dame, Paris. The time period is 1163 to 1250. First point, this, this is one of the finest monumental buildings of French Gothic style. It had a wide nave. It had a wide nave, double aisles, transepts, surrounded with chapel and western towers. Surrounded with chapel and western towers. The central nave is divided into number of bays. The central nave is divided into number of bays with cylindrical columns of with cylindrical columns of Corinthian capitals, Corinthian capitals carrying pointed arches, carrying pointed arches. The main doorway has a central pillar. The main doorway has a central pillar with statue of Christ. With statue of Christ. The cathedral is crowned. The cathedral is crowned with a beautiful central wheel window. With a central wheel window of 10 meters in diameter. This building, with the impressive facade and imposing towers, is one of the best cathedrals of Gothic style. This the building with the impressive facade and imposing towers is one of the best cathedrals of Gothic style. The second one is the second one is the late Gothic style. First point, the style became more ornate in design. The decorated style is characterized by geometrical, curvilinear, ogee arches which framed the colored glass windows, which framed the colored glass windows. Next point, clear story was made very large. Clear story was made very large. Next, vaulting ribs became numerous and complex in design. Star shaped pattern or stellar vaulting, star-shaped patterns or stellar vaulting became main feature of decoration of the interior of the churches.
And
Example
also,
of the churches.
yes,
Example Westminster Abbey with three bays of east cloister with three bays of east cloisters. The roof had moderate pitch. The roof had moderate pitch inclined at 50 degree. Okay, that's it for today. In the next class, we'll be starting with Renaissance architecture. Thank you.